Hello there. It's Swolbi Wan Kenobi, and today, after much waiting, I'm proud to answer the age-old question of, can I give Dark Souls 3 these hands? But unfortunately, this question has actually been answered quite a few times by a number of extremely talented challenge runners. There's just got to be some way that I can. So today, I'll be giving Dark Souls 3 these hands, and I can't use Estus for the entire run. Not for traversing the areas, not for boss fights, not for visits to scenic shots that I'm trying to film for the video. With that being said, I'm banning Estus not only as a challenge to myself, but because it uses the fire of the false god Gwyn, who was, I was on board with him in Dark Souls 1, but I continued the Age of Fire and got some extremely needed plastic surgery afterwards, and lo and behold, I show up in Dark Souls 2, find out that this same is still happening. So of course, I walked away from the path of the throne and I let them sort it out for themselves.
Yes, indeed.
Huge mistake, because now here I am in Dark Souls 3, where at least one of the lords seems to have noticed this little pattern, and they've opted to pass on their little birthright. But because of this, the fire calls out for kindling. So I'm going to go ahead and do what I should have done the last time. Without Estus, the only sources of healing available will be non-replenishable in-game consumables, like embers, cold ones, and blessings from the Lord, as well as having a blessed weapon in my offhand in order to get a bit of regen, but more on that later. I will be fighting every single boss in this game. I am not allowed to damage the boss with anything other than my bare fist. For a further clarification of what I'd set for my rules, anything used in the fist-only speedrun will be allowed, with the obvious exception of, Estus. Though you will see me pick up and level my Ashen Estus throughout the video, as I found it kind of funny. At least until I forgot where all of the upgraded materials were and I didn't want to seem as dumb as I really am. The TLDR of all of that for those of you with the short-term attention spans, I will be doing this run with nothing but the power of God and anime. I start up the run, test out my damage a bit, marvelous, and grab the first bonfire. I then stroll on down to Iudex Skundir, as though he were an old friend. He didn't remember me. Unfortunately for me, the very first boss of the run, and if you can call Iudex the first boss of the run, was a humbling point from the get-go. I thought it would be a bit less, torture and a bit more like the Asylum Demon from Dark Souls 1. Die after getting his health about midway once or twice, and sneak on by the 5th or 6th go-round. No such luck. Funnily enough, it reminded me of when I first started Dark Souls 3, which, although it wasn't the first Dark Souls I played, it was the first one that I beat. I'd gotten the first Dark Souls on Games with Gold on Xbox 360, and after failing to make it further than Firelink Shrine's Bonfire, I forgot about the series. Until years later, seeing multiple madmen beat the unbeatable game in the most ridiculous ways possible, which inspired me to struggle through my first playthrough of Dark Souls 3. And I think this is the hardest that Iudex has been since that first set of attempts all those years ago. With that taken care of, I open the gate to our hub world, I grab the only threads I'll ever need, but boy do you need something on everything in Dark Souls 3. And I introduce myself to the newest crew of NPCs. Haha. First off, we've got... nope, sorry guys, no time, not in the budget. I set out to the high wall, and blitz my way for bonfires and shortcuts alike. With the elevator unlocked, I go see Emma for a vigor check that she's absolutely destroying me in. She'd probably body me if she fought back. With Emma taken care of, I go and talk to the dancer about possibly doing an early game Lothric Castle run, but she doesn't think that people have been enjoying my little erratic storytelling, so she goes and makes me fight Vort instead. But in a minute. My main, gray rat here saying something about older women? Vort isn't too bad, and takes me a little less time than Iudex did overall. Granted, that was a bit of a learning curve for using fists in Dark Souls 3 at all. And before long, I have the small banner raised, and some old friends from a few games ago pop by to give me a lift. I stop by to say hi to my pilgrim friend for free levels later, and I head over to the locals, where I find that while Greywright has his heart in the right place, he's a bit off base. Loretta seems like she might just be a little bit too old for me. I do some rolling off cliffs for bonfires and make my way to the sewer for the Caestus, which is my choice for an offhand healing weapon. While there are probably better shields that I could use for the sake of both healing in my offhand and for parrying, I don't think anything else would quite embody the feeling I'm going for in this run like the Blessed Estus. With another bonfire unlocked, I now have access to the giant shooting range, which is a good spot to grab some free souls in a run where you can't really do any damage or heal yourself. From here, I make my way up the elevator and over to Siegward, where he helps me clear the way to the Flynn Ring, which will provide me with the single largest damage boost I'll have available in the run. With the Flynn Ring acquired, I head back over to Firelink to tell Greyrat about his MILF's demise, before charging through the Corvid-infested Road of Sacrifices, where I meet Henri and Horace, a pair that I'm quite sure is absolutely just, ecstatically happy in every single way. I don't stop to chat for long before it's off to the, Farron Cole. Well, it's not the one I was looking for. That must mean it's downstairs. Yes, the Sage Cole, which will unlock the Blessed Infusion, finally giving me a way to replenish my health.
But Swolbi,
I can hear some of you saying,
you should already have access to at least one form of healing via radiance.
I can't hear you. So from here I run through the swamp to light the braziers, and then I drop off Andre's new toys. Now I just need a Blessed Gem. Unfortunately, the only guaranteed Blessed Gems available to me at the moment are being blocked off by boss Fogwalls. So with that, it's time for me to pick either the Gank Squad or the Pew Pews. I end up going for the Crystal Sage, as the Cathedral will grant me a guaranteed Blessed Gem, the ability to farm for more of them if I needed, and also the first DLC's access point, which could be quite handy indeed. But just because I chose to fight the Crystal Sage doesn't mean it's going to be a cakewalk. Before the Sage starts summoning clones, the fight's actually pretty easy. Just rush the boss, cause damage until they run away, and then pick one of two corners of the arena to guarantee the spawn in the opposite corner. Once CS here starts their little cosplay contest, it's a little bit more of a gamble as to where they're going to end up. So, with a limited health pool and even more limited damage, I strap in to start learning to fight. Or at least that was the intention, until I recall that the Sage can be parried, if you can actually get the bastard to swing at you. And all of a sudden, this fight becomes more of a bullying session. Well, it was actually pretty easy. Once it was. Oh hey, this guy seems to be in need of some assistance. Whatever could I do for you, kind? You can't have shit in Lothric. I rushed the first half of the DLC to grab bonfires and upgrade material alike, before promising the third pillar of the church that I'd be back to remind her exactly why she ran to the Painted World in the first place. She can't take the heat. Whatever. Back to the cathedral. And it seems like the local clergymen have lost their sight of the light of God. I grab shortcut number 1. Holy crap, that is a big mother... I grab shortcut number 2. Kinky. And finally, I grab my reward, the Blessed Gem. And with that, I bone out to safety. I actually have enough souls on me to infuse this thing, and I don't want to have to go visit the target range again. Once Andre has infused my offhand Caestus, I'll now have access to a health regeneration of 3 health a second. Or at least, once the Caestus is leveled to plus 10, it will give me 3 health a second. At base level, it gives me 3 health every 3.5 seconds. If I want this thing to do any noticeable regeneration, I'm going to need Titanite and a slab. If necessary, I could always infuse another weapon to have in my main hand to switch to as I run away screaming for my life, but I'm not quite at that point yet. Besides, I still have another 3 health points per second in my future if I can just persevere. My vitality is growing, my fists are getting stronger, and I'm getting healing methods. It looks like things are turning around for old Swole. It's with this newfound confidence that I head back to the swamp to face off against my first Lord of Cinders, the Abyss Washers. To be totally honest, at this point in the run, I was hitting my stride. I was getting used to the spacing of attacks, I was readjusting to the patience needed for the length of some of these fight attempts, and I'm finally getting at the point where if I look at my health bar half-fight, I don't start crying. Progress. Plus, it helps that Phase 1 of this fight actually gives me a buddy to help kite the boss around. But once I hit Phase 2, it's all me. It takes some doing, but once I have the timing mastered, it's a vicious cycle of backstabs for the Lord of Cinder. But in the end, the only one doing any watching is me. I don't stop to head back or backtrack before heading straight into the Catacombs of Karthus, where I by and large ignore the Skelly Boys, ooh, a free bonfire, and book it to the Rope Bridge of Doom. I dip down into the Demon Ruins for another bonfire, and then I dip my toe into the Demon King fight. I'll be back in a bit. It's a quick attempt to check Volnir's drip, but the fit doesn't pass the inspection, as all 3 of the old King's pieces end up being fake gold. The man's got no riz. But with the catacombs taken care of, I emerge from underground to behold the site of the Boreal Valley. And now it's back to the cathedral to fight the first real wall of the run. It's funny to say about a boss who is, on average attempts, so ridiculously easy, but the Deacons of the Deep need Jesus. The first phase isn't too bad if you can even consider it a full phase, but the moment the 4 channelers start their Deathblight chant, I have to switch focus to take care of them before being able to fight the actual boss's health bar. All while remaining, high enough in health on my own to dash in and out of the crowd. Because if my health bar gets too low, I then have to kite the boss around the room to slowly build up my health again, but then the Deathblight kills me. That doesn't sound so bad though, or at least it wouldn't be if not for the fact that with this little damage, the Chanters will actually respawn a new member to start the chant again before you can actually kill all 4 of them. So what if you just blitz the bots to, get the kill before the chant? Well, I don't actually physically do enough damage to kill the boss before I die. But wait! Swolbi! I just realized! You killed Vort like ages ago at this point! Why don't you go grab the transposition kiln and get the left eye of Pontiff? That would be an absolutely banger idea. Truly one for the ages. But unfortunately for my sanity, I was more confident than cautious when it came to my recollection of what item does what and which enemy drops which item that does what. So imagine my surprise when, after reaching the Boreal Valley, I painstakingly end the life of this transformed Outrider Knight just to get the right eye of Pontiff instead. And then to recall back a dozen or so hours ago, to when I'd used Vort's soul for leveling purposes. So yeah, with that, I decide to do a little check with the community to see how other runners have gotten past the Deacons in fist-only runs. Huh. Alluring skulls, eh? So, with a new idea, I head back up to the rafters to get Patches to trick me so that I can unlock the Mad Lad as a merchant. Bingo. Unlimited alluring skulls. Literally 2 attempts later, and the Deacons of the Deep await Aldrich's return no longer. So I'll just snag this little doll. Thanks! With that headache taken care of, I used the doll to access the bonfire in the Boreal Valley, before taking a much-needed break to go fight the cursed rotten Greatwood. Truly, a boss of nightmares. But at this point, I just want a nice, easy mother... Okay, I didn't expect to actually die fighting the Greatwood, but here we are. With the rotted tree taken care of, that's another boss down. And unfortunately for me, I don't have any, easy options left to pick. While the Demon King is undoubtedly easier than Pontiff Sulyvahn, I knew which one was going to have a steeper learning curve. And so, I grabbed all the available shortcuts, and I started my attempts on the false Pontiff. This was also the fight that started what would go on to be a tremendous issue for me throughout the run. I ran out of storage space. I dedicated an entire 500 gig external hard drive just for capturing the footage of this run, but with my capture recording at 11 megabytes of storage a second, I hit my first storage cap during the Sulyvahn fight. I went back and I deleted some boss attempt footage for Iudex, Vort, and the Crystal Sage, getting back down to about 100 gigs used in the storage, and I started recording my footage differently, spacing recordings out by an hour, and separating area traversal recordings from boss fight attempts. With that taken care of, I continue attempts against Sulyvahn. The key here was to try to make this difficult boss fight a walk in the park. If I could just get good enough to parry Pontiff, not only in the first half of the fight, but after he summons his spectral clone, then I could make this run-ending fight a stepping stone. And just like that, I have the rest of the Pontiff's territory available for exploration. And Orlando, how I've missed you. Though how any of us who played Dark Souls can claim to have missed this place is beyond me. It's all shared trauma bonding. Luckily for me, in Dark Souls 3, it works as one of the best soul farming spots in the game for one as weapon and Estusless as myself. You just abuse the Silver Knight's stair mechanics for free backstabs and free souls. After running through the ruins of the once glorious Cathedral Hall, I open the front door and head into the fight against Aldrich. This fight was a case of learning a new strat, at least a new to me strat. Funnily enough, the same strat that I used against the Crystal Sage, which is just spawn point manipulation. If you position yourself in a corner, Aldrich will always spawn in the opposing diagonal corner. You attack and repeat until he goes into a second phase. Once he begins his magic star spawn, you instead run to the nearest corner as soon as he dives down, before repeating the diagonal run. This will cause the magic stars, or shards, or, asshole pellets to miss, and if you can reach him fast enough, he won't be able to use his Rain of Arrows attack, which allows you some sweet, sweet damage time on Aldrich's, abdomen butt thing. With the second Lord of Cinder taken care of, I grab what I was really here for, the Sun Princess ring. With this, I'm granted the equivalent of another 3 health per second, meaning once my Caestus is at plus 10, I'll have health regen of 6 health a second. For those of you who aren't entirely familiar with the Dark Souls leveling system, although my vigor is only at like level 20 or something right now, my health pool is actually like 600 to 700, meaning that even with the theoretical highest regen speed of 9 health a second, at in-game health, it's going to take me like 12 to 15 minutes to actually get my health back to full. So I'm celebrating about what is basically nothing at this point. So now, I can go either head back to the Dancer, or I can head down to the dark, damp recesses of the Urethil Dungeon. Funnily enough, having the jailers reduce my total health just keeps the Lloidsword ring active for me. On the way down, I find this cool little dragon headstone and I give it a try to see the comparative damage. It works like a dream, but this doesn't quite fit into what I would consider to be the rule set, so it's back to normal. Oh god, how do I get back to normal? One Google search later, and I know this bad boy isn't going anywhere until I yeet this mortal coil. So I go ahead and grab the Profane Capital Bonfire and introduce myself to Yhorm so he can introduce me to the ground. Now that I'm de-dragoned, it's time to— No, Yhorm, we're done with the ground bit, we're done! Yhorm is a pain in the rear. That's all I have to say. I can strafe his attacks efficiently, and I can guarantee the hit on his hand in order to get the stagger consistently. But after 15 consistent minutes, my focus wavers and— Yep. After about 2 hours of this, I decide to go and max out my regen the only way I know how, getting myself a Titanite slab. But Swolbi, you could have only found 6 chunks by this point. What could you have tirelessly thrown yourself at to have gotten the other? There are a few ways to go about getting myself a slab, at least at this point, but the only way that skips the trouble of killing at least one more boss and throwing off what I was loosely calling my route. So with that, I head to Patches to grab Sigurd's armor. I toss it down the well to the Onion Lad, and I progress his quest until I can make it to Sigurd in his cell to grab my reward, a Titanite slab. With my Caestus at its maximum capacity and my head held high, I go through the fog wall. And I find myself learning that you can get the Sigurd cutscene even after you've initiated the fight with Yhorm. I found myself in a bit of a panic as the scene played out, wondering if I should leave the arena. I'd considered the strat before I started the run. After all, I'm still using my bare fist here. But I didn't want myself counting on it to win. But now, as Sigurd stood before his old friend, declaring his intention to upkeep his promise, I knew that I had to try. I took up my fist to fight side by side with the legendary Onion Knight. His blows make easy work of the Giant Lord, but I have to do my small part to keep Yhorm's attention. It isn't long before the Third Lord has fallen, and an Ashen Knight has fulfilled his duty, finally finding his long-awaited and overdue rest. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for me. I'm plucked up into the air and plopped down right in front of the Dancer, presumably mocking me in the fact that there won't be any more friends to help out along the way. And I am very quickly reminded that, yeah, this is still Dark Souls. Deciding to enjoy the fact that I avoided an hour-long Yhorm boss fight on a technicality, I run for refuge in the Demon King fight. But unfortunately, it's no longer the challenge that it was when I dropped by earlier, and I quickly find myself once again facing the Dancer's fog wall. To cut the first half of what would be a long explanation short, after 4 hours of attempts, I went back to Anor Londo to farm for souls. At this point, I have 30 vitality, 40 strength, and 20 dexterity. It's not the maximum amount of health or damage that I can get in the run, but it's getting to the point where one level is taking about 20 minutes of farming to achieve. So I'm going to go ahead and give it my all. Although I'm not at my full potential, the upgrades are enough to afford me a hit or two throughout the fight, allowing me to more efficiently learn timings and the safe spots to go in for hits, until I've got the Dancer's move down, and we're intertwined in a dance of lethal blades and striking fists. In the end, the dancer stood as the current leader for time taken against a single boss in attempt time, dwarfing the previous lead. And I barely stood at all. Regardless, I pressed on. I activated the basin and gained access to Lothric Castle. And as I'm apt to do, I chose to throw the traditional pathing right out the window, going for the true path of champions, the route of suffering, the ultimate test of fortitude. I go fight a senile old man. I mean, okay, he's a king turned dragon, but he goes on and on about his invisible baby. I don't know, it just seems a little bit cruel.
You ignorant slaves.
Whoa! Holy man, that's crazy! Never mind. No regrets about this one, my guy. Oh, wait, hold on. I make the totally willing decision to go and grab some other bonfires before coming back a little bit later with more damage to funnel Oceiros into the corners over and over during his charging attack, until my fists can teach him that the power of dragons was, unfortunately, the wrong school of thought. No thought. Only bunk. I grab the tool of my mental demise for later, and I head towards the untended graves for a round 2 with an old sparring partner. He gets a good lick in or two, but after 3 attempts, I'm able to remind Gundyr of how we got demoted the gatekeeper in the first place. Oh cool, free eyes. With Gundyr taken care of, I once again head back to the dungeons of Irithyll and make my way to a collection of forgotten warriors, the only indicator of what it was I had to do. I took my position, and then the real challenge began. Alright, okay, I mean, complain all you want. You can clearly see that I am plunging my bare fist into the ancient dragon's head right here, okay? The finishing blow is clearly in one blow using my bare fist. I am not going to be taking any questions. But with the gimmick boss taken care of, I ascend to the mountaintop to the bell above. With the ancient note rung, storms descend upon the peak, and the air all around hums as though the electricity itself is tense with anticipation. I enter the arena of cloud, and there, before me, descends the most terrifying of the gods of Anor Londo, the long-forgotten Nameless King. Not to give everything away, but the Nameless King was the first of 4 bosses to take well over 12 hours in attempt time alone. A few bosses took a lot of in-game time because of grinding or because I got stuck trying to do traversal, but Nameless earned his reputation in this one. Funnily enough, as it's a fight that doesn't typically give you much time to heal anyways, it's not much different in how I approach the fight. But the level of patience required and the skill needed, I almost considered it too much. Time and again I threw myself at Gwyn's oldest son, and time and again he humbled me. I got to the point where the King of Storms couldn't do anything more than eat my time before facing down against his master. But that time itself took its toll, allowing my mind to slip and falter. Okay. Lockout. And here he will lay, nameless, conquered, and forgotten. Almost lost my cool there. With the Nameless King taken care of, it's back to the plot. So a quick bonfire over to Lothric Castle to meet up with the Dragonslayer armor, who isn't quite up to the task of filling the shoes that the Nameless King just left to fill. It isn't long before I'm able to work my way through the slow lumbering attacks of the armor and the laser beams of the butterflies to get the win and another bonfire. And then, just like 30 yards from this one, another bonfire. Man, I swear these things used to be harder to get. It's a quick opening of the archives, and a head dunk into some wax before blitzing the area like the boss at the end owes me some money. But with my shortcut elevators to the Princes unlocked, I'm ready to buckle down for another drawn-out boss session, which seems to be starting off swimmingly. I find pretty quickly that this is one of those bosses that I have an easier time not locking onto, though I am caught by a teleportation or two on occasion, which ends up costing my life more than a few times when my passive regeneration isn't able to keep up with the onslaught. But I'm getting pretty good at getting to the second phase, and... well, that's new. To be totally honest, I was aware of this glitch before I'd had it happen by accident the first time, but I've never even successfully done it on purpose before, so I hadn't even considered it. But now, I mean, pretty much every attempt I ran tried to recreate the effect. I get there in the end, and although the first phase isn't exactly to maneuver into this position, it does feel a little bit lackluster to take out the final Lord of Cinder in such a cheesy fashion. How could I rectify this feeling? By heading back to the painted world of Ariandel! But I guess before I do the real challenge, I'll finish off the downstairs neighbor. Down we go. And down.
Hi, doggy.
Well then. I don't know if the champion Gravetender heard me talking shit or something, but this group fight took some learning on my part. For whatever reason, even when I'm doing my haha fight Sister Friede before any of the Lords of Cinder runs, I never really have any issues with the Gravetender. Or it's just a run where I'm not even fighting him. Whatever the case, having these two alive at the same time to contend with is not good for my physical or mental health. Eventually, I developed a method of getting the Gravetender in a parry so that the animation would safely allow me to deal some damage as the wolf goes crazy around us. But believe me when I say that learning when exactly this window existed was not a quick crash course. After longer than I would like to admit, I finally finished the fight, and I get the heck out of Doge. Now it's time for me to officially head through the Corvid village. So I open up some shortcuts, say hi to my old grinding buddies, they hate me, and I see Vendrick for the first time in God knows how long. I take a page out of Yhorm's book and I introduce him to the ground. I get some stairs open, and I find myself face to face with a small painter who asked about her Uncle Gael. Little lady, if by that you mean the crazy hobo who first granted me access to this painting back in July of 2023, then no, I have no earthly idea where in God's name he is. I forge my way ahead to the gross bug area, and I light my way a bit with a torch to keep my blood where it belongs. With the lever turned and the passage opened, it's time to head back up to the Ariandel Chapel, where I will, for the last time, take a detour to grind until I have 40 vigor, 25 endurance, 40 strength, and 40 dex.
The doctor said if your shoulders get any bigger...
That's why we don't see him anymore.
I also grabbed the Aldrich ruby ring from the malformed thing in Anne Rolando, but that was actually just kind of by accident while I was doing my Silver Knight strat, and I no longer have the footage from that 9-hour farming session. But with every possible advantage that I could give myself for the run, I find myself in an endless loop of attempts to face off against Sister Friede and Father Ariandel. Over and over, I find myself stuck in the second phase trying to kite the two enemies around until I'm finally able to finish off the duo, only to find myself repeating the process over and over again to reach the third phase. Again and again I fought, and again I felt like I was getting slightly closer. I fought down to my last ember, and I saved it for the time that I felt I would need it the most. If I could just get her down to a low enough point in the third phase, I could afford that luxury, and I could give it my all until the fight was won. I felt my sanity slipping as it did against Nameless, and I felt as though I was fighting in a trance. At one point, it no longer felt like I was reacting to Friede, but that I was acting before she herself knew what move she was going to perform. When I realized how well I was doing, I lost the trance state, and I started to panic. Here she was in the third phase, with her health so low. I used my last ember. My health bar surged back to full, as the fire within burned brighter than the black flames around me. And she hit me. Twice. Without that ember, I would have died. But with this grace of health granted to me, I'm able to charge in and send the third pillar of the church to a resting place of her own. That took some doing. I can physically feel the toll that fight had, but at this point, all there is to do is to trust in what I set out to do. The power of God and anime, right? With the massive weight over me that was Sister Friede now gone, I do find myself slightly reinvigorated with the success. That's 2 of the 3 hardest bosses in the game put to bed. If I gave up now, it would all be for nothing. On to the Drag Heap. More than any other area, this is the maddest dash of all. Alright, time for the big gang fight. The Demon Princes, while extremely annoying, aren't the hardest of bosses in Dark Souls 3. They just hit hard and have a big health pool. Enough muscle memory, kiting, and daring risky plays to grab damage at times when you'd otherwise be at risk yourself, and soon enough you'll have the first phase taken care of. And one of 2 Demon Princes will revive to go for round 2. Which of the 2? Well, whichever one you kill last. Does it make a difference as to which of the boss forms you'll be fighting? Yeah, it does. Is there an easier boss? I mean, according to the community, sure. There's absolutely an easier boss phase to select, but at this point in the run, not only am I slightly mad, a little bit hollow, and extremely foolish to have ever even started this run in the first place, I'm a glutton for punishment. And since I've chosen the easy route a time or 2 throughout the run, I figure, hey, Let's make one of those make it harder times. Why? I really couldn't tell you. Either way, after what felt like forever, I take down the Demon Prince, and I make my way to the Ring City. Seeing as every run that I've ever played has made the Ring City feel like an overleveled endgame area, I'm already pretty adept at skirting around the enemies here. I've rushed this DLC far more times than I'd ever even considered fighting every enemy. So after grabbing the first 2 bonfires, I cheese Midir off the bridge with his safe zones, and then I grab what just might be my most used ring of all time, Chloranthy +3. I choose to start the Halflight fight before Midir, as it's traditionally the easiest in the DLC, but I get frustrated with the opening monologue playing over and over during my attempts, so I hop on over to Midir, which is a fight that I actually feel much more familiar with. I end up totally right in that regard, as after only an hour or so of attempts, I stop to make myself a sandwich, and then come back to immediately defeat Midir with the power of a full belly. I should try that way more often. The downside being, now it's back to struggling against Halflight. And I'm sure many of you are asking yourself, how in the hell did Halflight of all bosses end up being an endgame wall? But lo and behold, here we all are learning about unfortunate lessons like my name is Lemony Snicket. See, before Halflight himself even joins the fight, I have to face off against the first of his summonable minions, who not only do far more damage than I do, have far more health than I do, and as mentioned, can be summoned again, they can heal themselves and Halflight. What does this mean for the run? Well, it doesn't actually mean anything different from any other boss, except for the fact that a single attempt on this Gwyn-worshipping piece of shit is at minimum 20 minutes long. The fight that finally managed to take this bastard down was 30 minutes long, and I even ended up using an AI trick to get a parryable attack more consistently by throwing a consumable away from Halflight mid-fight just to get his lunge. All in all, Halflight. With all but the final 2 bosses, I forged onwards. Despite everything, all the self-imposed rules, all of the feelings of self-doubt, all of the demons and gods who have been in my way, with 23 bosses behind me, I find myself against the last wall of this run. Gael is a simple fight. He's straightforward. He doesn't pull any tricks, and he doesn't bother replenishing his health bar between stages. Gael is another undead, who's made it to the end of time. And like me, he has almost nothing left. Nothing left to give, nothing left to lose. I've been out of embers for ages. There are no remaining items in the game that could possibly provide me any further healing than that of the Caestus in my left hand and the ring on my finger. Again and again, Gael smashes his slab of a greatsword into me, and I fall. Both he and my brain are screaming at me. Why do you keep getting back up? I could use a shield in my main hand. Why? To spend another fight running away? Defeating the purpose of the challenge that I've set for myself? And why set it? Was fist weapons not good enough? Was bare fist with the Vanquisher ring not good enough? Will this be good enough? When I finally beat Gael, when he falls, when they all fall, and I've beaten every boss in Dark Souls 3 with my bare hands, will I feel like I deserve to call myself a challenge runner? Will beating this game with my fist and no Estus bring me satisfaction or happiness? No. But it isn't meant to. I already know where my happiness, my light, and my strength come from. I don't challenge myself for the rush of dopamine at the end of the tunnel, or for the recognition I may receive from others. I don't challenge myself because of some masochistic need to self-torture, or because I want to feel the adrenaline rush of my blood pumping. I challenge myself because I believe that I can do it, and that the only people who are going to hold me to the standards that I set are me and God. So I'm sure as hell not going to be held back by this hollow walking corpse of a man keeping me from my goal. It was a good fight, Gael, and I thank you for reminding me why I do this. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a fire to snuff out. With the souls of the lords returned to their thrones, I finally make my way to the kiln of the first flame one final time. I approach the soul of Cinder and prepare myself for the final battle. He may not pack the same punch Gael did, but I'm still not what one might call a threat. It takes me a minute. What with me taking the time to gauge the safe spots in all 4 possible attack forms of Cinder's first phase, but after enough trial and error, it's a consistent shot to phase 2. better known as the Shade of Gwyn. This is a fight that I know well. This is a fight that I've beaten in 2 games, time and time again. This is a fight that I know I can beat. And this fight was lost. I went straight to the kiln of the First Flame from fighting against Gael. My storage unit hit max capacity before I won the fight against the Soul of the Cinder. And I didn't even notice. The victory I'd waited so long for. The final moments of me letting the flame die out. I lost it. And I didn't even notice until I'd gotten to the point of trying to use the footage for the video. What could I do? I didn't know if I should just speed run to the Soul of Cinder and do the fight again. It felt empty. I'd already beaten the Soul of Cinder with my bare fist and no Estus. Doing it again almost felt boring. But that's when it hit me. I was going to finish this run exactly how I said I was going to. With nothing but the power of God and anime.
Good to see you again. Go ahead and dive in. See the latest concoction from the mess in my head. Grab a seat, a bite to eat, recline and throw up your feet and enjoy this little bite of my insanity. It's been a while, I know, since I last put on a show, so there's no time to waste. Now are you ready to go? So without further ado, please enjoy from me to you this pointless story of suffering that I went through. I know that I act in ways no one has asked from me, except my brain, and that guy keeps me sane. He says keep going, keep on growing till you're showing all the progress that you've made, and you can proudly put up on display. Can't backpedal now, I'm charging straight ahead, and I don't know if I do, I'll make it cross the finish line. Won't second guess myself, cause I know I'm doing fine. Just wipe my brow and shake it off and take it one small step at a time. Suffering and pain, it's all in hopes that I'll entertain. I can't quite see my goal from here, but with a little patience it'll be so clear, and I can finally let my worries disappear. All the time I spent in torture wasn't vain. The telltale's worth it in the end.
Thank you all so much for watching this installation of the These Hands series in Dark Souls. There may be other games that get these hands in the future, but for now, I actually have something a little bit different in the works. Something I believe I am actually the first to attempt in any capacity, and I'm pretty excited. And because I'm switching gears from my These Hands content a little bit, I do want to make sure that nobody gets too antsy about the change, so my next video, after Pokemon, will be Bloodborne, so don't worry, FromSoft content will still be something that I make on this channel. Speaking of other channels, I want to give you guys a chance to go on over to check out Swolbi Wan Kenobi, which is my second channel where I'll be posting unedited boss fights, like the full fight collection from this very run, already available for you to go watch right now. As well as my music channel, Swolbi Wan Kenobi, where I've already posted the collection of all of the music used in this video. That's right, part of the reason that this video took so long to make was that I composed, played, recorded, and edited all of the music throughout this video. Hopefully making it impossible to get any kind of copyright strike, but I guess we'll see, won't we? In addition to avoiding copyright, I also just enjoy making music, and will continue to make new songs to use in future videos, even if I do continue to use some of my previous work as well. If you're still here, you're likely a personal friend, family member, or just an extremely kind fan. So to all of you, one final enormous thank you. Until next time, this is Swolbi Wan Kenobi, signing off.